All right, I already talked about the Knicks kind of in depth, specifically about how it pertains to one Donovan Mitchell. And just to piggyback off that for a second, the fact that it hasn't happened yet kind of tells me that the Knicks have reservations about it, especially if they're giving up, 7 first-round picks or something like that for him. So don't expect that to happen really anytime soon because it doesn't seem like they're that close because I figure, if the Knicks were all in, would have happened already. So, and whether that Donovan Mitchell even upgrades them enough that it matters, whole different discussion. But I think it's a good time to kind of take stock of what the roster looks like now. Look at what their offseason was up to this point. And, what's going on here in the Big Apple coming off an 11th seed in the East. Now, of course, most of their offseason was basically spent moving mountains to sign Jalen Brunson, which is just hilariously probably the most a franchise has ever done for a player who's never made like an all-star team. I think Jalen Brunson's a great player, great story. Just kind of funny. I understand the whole CAA connection and his dad and all that. It's just kind of wild to me. But the point is Jalen Brunson is now the New York Knicks starting point guard, and I'll be curious to see how that unlocks Julius Randle, maybe more pick and roll stuff, off ball stuff. And if I'm the Knicks, I'm at least taking from now to the trade deadline to really, see how this works with Brunson, RJ, Fournier, Randle, Mitchell Robinson. How does that lineup work? Because this past year it was mostly their bench where you'd see a lot of the good plus-minus stuff, and the starters were not great. So, see how Brunson changes kind of the chemistry and how your offense works. And then you obviously kind of have the younger guys coming off the bench, and Obi Toppin, Cam Reddish, quickly. Derrick Rose is obviously still there, not a young guy, but will provide some depth there. And so, it's a decent team with a great amount of depth. Whether they'll move Cam Reddish, seemed like they were shopping him a little bit, obviously included in the Donovan Mitchell talks a bit. But maybe he'll play some, because he really didn't play a ton last year for the Knicks. Would be excited to see him just kind of give him more of an opportunity. But, you're looking at them at 11 here, and really only Brunson's the new addition. The Isaiah Hartenstein piece is actually, I think, just a really good backup big, really solid. Look forward to seeing what he does there. But, you're looking at from this past year, obviously Charlotte, talked about them yesterday and how kind of a mess that is. So you could say maybe the Knicks will jump to 10. But then you go up to, Cleveland at 9. They expect to be better than that this year. Atlanta at 8. Probably, with the addition of DeJounte Murray, they project to be better. Brooklyn, who knows? That could go a couple different ways. But I think, as long as they have some form of their stars or at least trade for another star, they're going to be in that conversation. And then, you go up the line in terms of Chicago, Toronto. There's not, you don't see the Knicks really jumping any of those teams per se. And they're still, Washington hopes to be a little bit better. We'll talk about them, later in the week. But the Knicks, they're kind of stuck, and whether they're going to have, the decision here of, are we going to be kind of a perennial 6 to 10 seed, or is there some way to either tear it all down and build around, Barrett, Reddish, Toppin, quickly, Brunson, Robinson, and it's weird because that's really a big core to kind of build around. That it's if they haven't already shown much, then maybe it's not even that great a core that deserves to be. Then you might maybe just trade for assets at that point. But, again, Toppin hasn't played a ton of minutes for a full season yet. Same with, Robinson's gotten hurt a bunch. It's kind of hard to know exactly what we have with those guys in terms of what their long-term trajectory is. But, Donovan Mitchell coming in, does that make them better than Cleveland? Does it make it better than Atlanta? Does it make, and we're talking about the, bottom half of the playoff teams in the East. They're not, we can all agree they're probably not in the discussion for, title contenders with Donovan Mitchell, especially depending on what they give up to get him. Like, the Knicks aren't going to be able to, do anything long term. And obviously the question of does it win them a title is kind of unfair, because the answer is no. But even I think the next question is, does it make them competitive for the next 10 years? I'd say maybe, but again, it kind of locks them into that perennial 6 to 10 seed. And maybe that's what New York needs at this point after the taste of the playoffs a couple years ago. Maybe just having a team that's consistently competitive and plays in a playoff series each year, maybe that's good enough for now. But, we're dealing with guys that we kind of understand their ceiling at this point with, does Donovan Mitchell have another level? I don't know. I'm a little lenient, or at least hesitant to say yes. But I think, if you want to unlock quickly, if you want to unlock Toppin, Cam Reddish, now's the time, as opposed to kind of just settling for mediocrity for a couple years. And, it's tough because your assets in Randall and Fournier aren't probably going to get you a huge return. This is another team you'd consider, like Charlotte, if you want to do kind of a hard reset and do the whole Westbrook thing, get a couple picks back, get off your long-term contracts for some of your older guys, and then have a bunch of cap space going into next year after you shed Westbrook's $47 million. Don't hate the idea for the Knicks. Obviously, no one really wants Russell Westbrook on the floor. You just have to think of it from a financial sense. No disrespect to Westbrook. And this team has a lot of point guards. There's no need for him on a basketball level. But from the financial approach, maybe there's something there. But I would wait to do anything until the trade deadline. See what we have, how Randall looks, how Fournier looks, see if they can kind of recover their reputation a little bit and boost that trade value. And, if they're in the middle of the pack, maybe you try and you take a big swing. But if they're kind of floundering, then that's when you kind of regroup and go for a top pick. Because what's the point in being, 10 to 12 every year? So that's how I see the Knicks. Feel free to let me know how you see them. Where will they end up in the standings? Should they trade for Donovan Mitchell? Love to hear the arguments. And that's going to do it for me for now. So take care of yourselves. Take it easy. And I'll see you next time.